Hey, what's up guys? Mr. Chris here with Infotainment.com. Today we're back in our 2017 Jeep JL. We're going to be installing some paddle shifters for you. So if you want to see how that's installed, stay tuned. All right, before you get started, a few tools that you're going to need to do the job is a 10mm socket, a T10 and T20 Torx bit, that's for the steering wheel. You can use a flathead, I'm going to use a pick. And if you don't have a screwdriver, you can use just a regular ratchet, that'll work. Just to unbolt that steering wheel, it's at a weird angle sometimes. You might need an angle to get back there. And in the center of the steering wheel, you have a very large bolt, or nut rather, which is a 24mm, or alternately, I have a 15/16 that works as well. And I'm using a big impact and a little impact to do the whole thing. If you don't have an impact, use a ratchet. You may need a larger ratchet or a torque wrench for your steering wheel nut. All right, what else you're gonna need for the install is what's included with the kit when you buy it from Infotainment.com. You have your 2 paddles and your wiring harness. You also can change your wheel at the same time. Let me show you some differences here. All right, so if you wanted to get a new wheel, this would be the time to add these paddle shifters, because you have to remove the whole wheel anyway. You might as well upgrade it while you're in there. But on these 2 steering wheels here, I'm gonna show you the differences. In your OEM wheel without paddle shifter, this is the standard steering wheel controls that you'll have on the back of your wheel, versus the wheel that comes with paddle shifters. So you can see the shape is just a tiny bit different between the 2. Now, they only make this wheel as of right now with an orange stitch on the inside. This wheel here is obviously our black stitch wheel, and we have our red wheel, red stitching wheel installed in our Jeep already. This does fit on your OEM wheel, although the shape is a little different. It'll just kind of slide in there, and it'll be a tight fit, but it'll fit just fine. If you didn't want to convert your wheel to have paddle shifters, you can definitely get another wheel that is designed for the shifters itself. It just fits in there a tiny bit better, but overall it's not going to make a huge difference once our wheel's back in the vehicle. So before we do anything, we're going to disconnect our positive and negative battery terminal, because you don't want any kind of power running into your airbag upon removal. So let's get started. All right, so at the battery, you got 2 10mm bolts that are keeping your terminals on. Loosen those up a little bit, and we'll get these out of the way. All right, now we're ready to take the wheel off. All right, so at our steering wheel here, on either side back here, there's a little plate. You have to pop that plate off. Behind this plate is a 10mm bolt. You're gonna do that for both sides. All right, once you got those popped out, it's a 10mm bolt in there, kind of at an angle. I pulled the steering wheel all the way out so I can use my impact to get that 10mm out. There's one on both sides. Once you have those out, you can pull your airbag and horn straight back. This is a wheel that we installed in here, because this is not the wheel that this Jeep came with. There's another video with us installing this wheel, because it had the red stitching on there to match our interior. So if you didn't see that video, basically the same process as that video. You have to pop these security tabs up on the airbag itself. There's 3 of them, 3 of these little connectors here, just like that. Once you have that popped up, you can actually get a flathead and press the tabs in on the sides, and that'll pop them out pretty easily. All right, once you have those 3 out, you're left with the horn switch connector here. And this one's a little different. There's actually a button in here to depress, or to depress. What I like to do is just get a pick or your flathead, stick it in there, and into that little crease there, that crevice, and that'll give you just enough space for this thing to slide straight out of there. Now we got our airbag and our horn, we'll set that aside. All right, once the airbag's out of the way, you'll see two connectors here. You got a black one on the left side. You can pull that out, and a white one on the right side. Do the same thing, you gotta depress the little clip. And this is where I prefer a pick tool over a flathead, just because you can get in there a little bit better. And now that we got those disconnected, we can take this big nut off. Again, that's a 15/16 or a 24mm socket. All right, now that our wheel's free, what we're gonna do is pull straight back. Our wheel will pull off of this spleened or this grooved bolt here, and the wires for the airbag will remain actually on the steering hub itself. So this is connected to the clock spring. So as you pull this back, you want to kind of feed this through that hole. You don't want to yank this and yank this at the same time. You'll see what I mean here, because you don't want to damage this clock spring here. So you're going to pull your airbags or your airbag connectors out separately through the hole, and now we have our whole wheel off. We can take this to the bench and install our paddle shifters. All right, so now that we got the wheel on our bench here, what we're basically going to do is turn this wheel into this one. We need to strip everything down to bare bones, so it looks pretty much like this wheel here. No paddle shifters, no nothing installed, not even the plastic trim. So to do that, there's 6 T20 Torx, 4 right here on the back of the plastic trim here, and 2 more in the shifter itself, or in your steering wheel button themselves. So there's a center plastic cover here, just like on the steering wheel, that'll pop up, exposing a single T20 Torx. And you got one on both sides, so we'll pop the other side off, and we can go ahead and pull all these Torx bits out. And I'm using a magnetic bowl to hold all my stuff so I don't drop it. And then right at the bottom here on the steering wheel, you have 2 T10 Torx screws as well. All right, with all that out, we can pop our steering controls out and depress the little button here. Set that aside. Now, if you wanted to reuse these or install them back into the wheel at a later time, because they're almost identical, the part number is off by 1 or 2 numbers, I believe. What you might want to do is write on one of them left or right, or put a little L or an R on there, just so you know for reference when you go to put that back in. As you can see, they're literally identical. All right, with our controls out of the way, we can start to pull up on our plastic trim here. A couple spots in here where the wires are actually attached to this piece here. Up in here, you have 2 little hook type things that latch onto these this orange harness here, one on either side. So when the cover's in this position from this side, you can actually push those off with your flathead or your pick before you lift up on it. And then also you have 2 connectors at the bottom of the steering wheel that are clipped in as well. This one popped out, but there is 2 of them. They're actually different, one on either side. One slides into this whole little cavity, and the other one slides onto this little protruding clip here. So once you slide those pieces out, you'll be able to free this little plastic trim cover, and we can set that aside. All right, and actually from this position here, what you can go ahead and do is, if you got a good memory, you don't have to do anything, but if you have a camera phone, go ahead and take a picture of the layout here, because some wires go up and over your steering wheel. If you can see that, some actually go on the front side, some go on the back side. So what I did when I did this before is take a picture with my cell phone, just so I know the whole orientation of how it should go back, because we're pulling this whole harness off and we're actually going to replace it with the new one. So we want to make sure that everything is aligned in the correct position here. So from the front side, we'll pull up on our trim to remove this as well. And flipping this over, you'll get a view of our connectors here. We have to pull those out. We'll do the same thing on the other side. All right, we can set this aside also. Now we're left with our barrier wheel and our wiring. And you can see attached up here, there's two little black Christmas tree type pops that hold this wiring harness in, as well as the two wire connectors at the bottom down here that we also have to pull out. All right, with everything disconnected, I'll take our wiring and unfold it and set that aside, and then we'll grab our new harness here. And all you do is push those little black Christmas tree things back in there, and you can kind of get an idea of how our wiring was laid out already. So these two went behind the wheel, and the same for the other side. And on the front, you should have the long connector aiming towards the driver's side, and you have the shorter connector on the passenger side of the steering wheel. The long connector will have a separate plug on here. This is for your horn switch, so this will be on the front side. And if we flip it over, all right, so with your harness wrapped over the back of the steering wheel here, you're going to want to identify the two connectors with the 3 wires in them. These are the new steering wheel control paddle shifter connectors that you're going to use. So your old one only had 2, this one has 3, indicating that they're for paddle. And basically they wrap over the back side of the steering wheel and then wrap around the arm and come through where the paddles mount. So you can do that for both sides, just like that. And from here, you can actually grab your paddles and install the paddles from this point. So we got the positive or the upshift will be on the right side of the steering wheel. Plug that in, slide that in place. And the downshift or negative side is on the driver's side. And we can't put the screws in yet because we don't have the front installed yet, but we can have those plugged in just so everything is kind of in its place. Now at the bottom, you have your 2 white plugs. We'll plug those in just like that. And with everything kind of tucked out of the way, we'll grab our cover here. Now, you can go ahead and put all the wires back into the plastic hooks in here. But the main thing, more important than anything, is you don't pinch any of the wires. So as long as you're not pinching anything or you're not going to screw any of your mounting screws back through the wires, you should be good. Now on the side here, you can see in the opening, this is where the horn gets mounted to, or the airbag gets mounted to with that 10 mil that we pulled out inside of the Jeep. You want to make sure that the wiring is not impeding the ability for that bolt to go right back through there. So as long as this is nice and open, you should be good. But technically, to get it how it's supposed to be, this is actually wrapped up on the top there, and it's actually supported on the top side, which you can see it doesn't give you a lot of room there. So you want to have it go up and come down ideally. So when you bring it down, it's nice and tight, all in place where it's supposed to be. All right, now that all this is in place, we can flip the steering wheel over and we can reattach our front set of steering wheel controls here. keeping everything in the same orientation that you had the factory one set up. You want to make sure all the wiring is routed in the same fashion, out of the way of anywhere you're going to have mounting screws positioned. All right, now we can flip it back over and we can attach all of our T20 Torx that we removed earlier. All right, so I got the wires all tucked away back into the position that they used to be in. And now I'll flip the steering wheel over and I can go ahead and the two T20 Torx back into our newly installed paddle shifters. And as you can see, even though the shape is different from the wheel that comes with these standard, it still fits pretty much exactly like it should. Everything works like it should. So you don't have to change your steering wheel, just an option if you wanted to get the exact cutout. You definitely can do that, but you don't have to. All right, now that we got our paddles installed, we just have to reinstall those two T10 Torx at the bottom of the wheel here. All right, everything looks good. Now we're ready to reinstall the wheel into our car. All right, now that we're back in the Jeep, what we're gonna do is fish our airbag wires back through that right cavity in our wheel. And how we're gonna line the wheel up is basically on the top of the steering wheel here. You can see this kind of notch that's kind of etched into the steering wheel. There is another notch on the bolt that we're actually going to attach it to. So all you have to do is line both of those up and you should be perfectly aligned where the wheel needs to be. So let's run these wires through here. You kind of got to do it one at a time. They don't all three fit through that kind of small hole. And as you're bringing it up, you want to make sure that this is kind of even left and right. And you'll see why in a second here. All right, so inside the wheel here, you can see those two holes are actually perfect for the wires and those plugs that are on our clock spring. You can go ahead and push that down flat and we can put our 24mm nut back on and you can plug your connectors back in. There we go. Now from this point, we're ready to reattach our airbag. We'll start with the horn switch. And as far as the airbag connectors, they're all color coded. So you got a yellow, a tealish light blue color, and then the black one goes right on top there. Your connector in, make sure to depress that little red security lock that's on top. There we go. All right, and on the airbag harness is this little black Christmas tree that actually goes into the hole in the back of the airbag. Then we can slide our airbag back into place. And from here, you want to grab the two 10 mils that you pulled out that's holding the airbag down. You kind of want to press on the horn a little bit and hand tighten both sides in before you tighten it down. All right, now we can tighten it down the rest of the way. All right, and lastly, we'll put our plastic covers back on. Those just snap into place. All right, now we can reattach our positive and negative battery terminals. All right, now that our battery's hooked up, we can run our OBD Genie programmer. All right, and that wraps up the install. As you see, we got our paddle shifters installed, and once you have these installed, it actually help you when you're off-roading. What I find is it helps you even more when you're just coasting through traffic and you need a quick little gear change, downshift to pass by, you know, some slower driving traffic. Once you have these, it's almost like the rear view camera thing. You didn't know you needed it until you had it. Really simple, quick upgrade for your Jeep, kind of transforming it a little bit more to that Rubicon 392, what these paddles come with or come from the factory. All right, if you like this install and you want to see more, come to infotainment.com.